It's October 17th, 2022. This is a special edition of Roqe. Hi there, welcome to episode 207 of Roqe and another special edition. Never forget the massacre of Zahedan. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Salam Dustan Aziz. Durud ba shoma. In all the absolutely gutting news that is coming out of Iran, let's never forget the massacre of Zahedan. In all the fury and fervor and wishes for this regime to be gone, never forget the massacre of Zahedan. For all the apologists still singing a reformist song, don't let them forget the massacre of Zahedan. Let's make a collective pledge that from this moment on, we will never forget the massacre of Zahedan. As the Iranian Revolution of 2022 gathers steam, there are so many images and moments that serve to infuriate, radiate, and animate a desire to see the termination of this unethical dystopian theocracy. But is there any single event in the last month that more exemplifies the naked tyranny of the Islamic Republic of Iran? Never forget the massacre of Zahedan. It's been just over 2 weeks since the deadliest incident in this uprising to date. This would be the occasion heretofore named Bloody Friday, when militia and regime thugs opened fire on a crowd of protesters, including children and people who were praying. At least 66 are known to have died in that one incident, but the truth is the numbers could be much, much higher. Zahedan is the main city of Sistan-Baluchistan, Iran's poorest region on the border with Pakistan and Afghanistan in the southeast. It's a place characterized by water scarcity, environmental injustice, and decades of neglect and hardship under the Islamic Republic. Like other remote ethnic areas, including Sanandaj or Ardabil, it doesn't get the headlines like the major urban epicenters, but surely we have to focus far beyond Tehran. Never forget the massacre of Zahedan. As protesters demonstrated outside a police station and threw some stones, security forces and plainclothes militia opened live ammunition on the crowd. Not only protesters, but those who were just standing nearby and watching were shot. They were injured, they were killed. By evening, the word is they were firing at anyone they saw on the streets. It's a macabre scene that you would base a horror movie on. Never forget the massacre of Zahedan. And as if on cue, the regime has tried to suppress information coming out about this atrocity. Who were some of these so-called terrorists armed with nothing other than stones? Omid Saharzadeh, 17 years old. Sadis Kashani, 14 years old. Mohammad Rakhshani, 12 years old. It's so grisly it defies imagination. This was a massacre. What other word can be used for the random killing of scores of children and people who were praying? There is no way to whitewash an event so drowned in blood. No amount of internet blockages and disruption of cellular networks can forever hide the stain of murder on the hands of this Islamic Republic. The regime thugs had orders to kill, and with no fear of any consequences. Why? Well, maybe they assumed that no one would care about the people of Baluchistan. And it's up to us to prove them wrong. Never forget the massacre of Zahedan. This special edition of Roqe, I will be joined once again by a few voices from across our diaspora. The founder and director of the Cyrus Forum, Mariam Memarsadeghi in Washington, D.C., acclaimed British-Iranian artist Afshin Naghouni in London, UK, and former gymnastics champion and popular YouTuber Shahrzad Pezhman in Whitby, Canada, as well as a special Roqe Roundtable to kick things off. This is episode 207, a special edition of Roqe, The Uprising. Over a month and growing. Never forget the massacre of Zahedan. right, here we go. A few fantastic guests on this episode 207. And to kick things off, our Roqe Roundtable, and Pegah is here. Hi, Pegah.
Hello.
You're still smart, Pegah, but in these serious days, I feel silly doing the monikers for everybody. Shaya is here as well.
Hi.
Hi, Shaya. And a couple of new voices to add to the Roqe on-air team for this show. Our graphics and video producer, who's usually behind the scenes, but is at the table today, Anahita Nayebi. Hello.
Hi, Jian.
Hi. And media performer and business consultant Darya Emami is with us today. Hello, Darya.
Hello.
All right, so thank you everybody for. We have a full studio here. This is it's over a month and growing is the title of today's episode, and I have to say I was one of those people. I'll probably explain this to a couple of our guests who come on too. That was, I don't know if I didn't dare to dream, or I was too cynical, or what. I was one of those people kind of after a few days going, I'm not sure. Even after we did the first episode with the voices in Iran, we've been doing that on Thursdays where we speak to people inside Iran. And after we heard from some of those frontline protesters, and it was clear how isolated they are and how much help they needed, I was really dispirited and thinking, well, this is going to be another a larger version of it, and one that comes more frequently now, and one that's more violent, and we're going to get closer eventually. But not only has it lasted, but this would be the uprising, the protest movement, the revolution, if you will. But it feels like it's really solidifying both inside Iran, like this is what we're doing. No, we're not going anywhere. And in the diaspora as well, in terms of people acclimatizing to our new life, which is we're going to do whatever we can to support our sisters and brothers in Iran. Would that be your feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that because when this all started, I kept on saying, within the first week or so, I kept on saying to friends, family, whoever I would talk to, that I'm cautiously optimistic. And just earlier today, I actually posted something on Instagram, and I had this kind of quote, and I was saying, now I'm choosing to be hopeful. And I really am. And so there's been this shift between, just being optimistic or cautiously optimistic, as I was saying kind of at the onset, and now where, this has really picked up momentum, whether it be inside or outside of Iran. The Western world, which we were talking about weeks ago, has really started to show their support.
Started to wake up.
Yeah, exactly. They've started to wake up. So, this is really taken force. And
just to calibrate the tone here, I'm not saying, and I'm sure none of us are saying, yay, eureka, the promised land is here. And in fact, I've just done this opening essay here on Zahedan, which makes me sick thinking about it. And it's not a unique situation in Iran. It's pretty bad. It's about as bad as it gets anywhere in the world, that kind of massacre in history. And this is the kind of thing that, in a moment, I'm going to ask you guys about the Evine prison fire on the weekend. So we know that there's so many horrible things happening and so much more to come. But the idea that there is this determination led by the youth who are leading us in Iran that is unabated. Shaya, I see you nodding over there.
Yes, I remember, as you said, the first episode that we started talking about morality police. Now it's like a revolution led by youth, and wow, yeah.
We've come a long way from just describing what Gasht Ershad is. Yes. Darya, your thoughts?
Yeah, I remember the first gathering that we had. It was in front of CIBC. It was right the day after Mahsa got killed. It was a couple hundred people.
I think it was in front of CBC.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Not the bank, CIBC.
Yes.
But that would have been a good place too, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was, it was in front of CBC. And we were actually hoping to have media coverage. I think I saw only one reporter there. I don't know which media they were from, but still, it was only a couple hundred people there. And honestly, I went there thinking that, okay, we should be supporting this, but I was not hopeful this to be continuing after a month with more and more people every day. So,
and it's quite literally the teenagers of Iran dragging the asses of the rest of us, going, no, we're not fucking, you guys, you want to be part of this? We're going, we're going. And we talk a lot about shaming these days. Who's shaming? They are shaming, I think, any one of us that wants to, rest on our, okay, we've come so far in the last month, they're just like, let's keep going. And you guys better be with us if you claim to care about this. And so the diaspora is rising to that occasion, I feel, increasingly. And we'll talk about the demonstration we were on the weekend, Darya. I saw you there. And Anahita, do you want to say something about this in terms of just the feeling you have about passing the 1 month mark? And now we definitely know this is, I remember Kambi Hosseini was one of our shows about a month ago when this started, and he said this time is different. We now know that empirically this is different because it simply lasted longer than anything, including the Green Movement, by the way, which was the big one that we circled, in terms of the largest demonstrations that have happened since the 79 revolution against this regime. And that's been surpassed now in terms of the strength of this.
Of course, because I was in Iran when Mahsa killed.
Yes.
So, and I saw what's happening in the city, and my friends were in the protest in the first days, and I was sure this time is different as the other times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I should just note, you're listening to the voice of Anahita. So Anahita, about actually probably 5-6 weeks ago, you came to me and said, my father's not doing well and I have to go back to Iran. It was within 3 or 4 days. You had to buy a ticket and go, and you're such a wonderful family member. You went and took care of your parents in Iran, of course, and we said, yes, go. So we're going to miss you here. And literally, pretty much the moment you got to Iran, the situation happened with the killing of Mahsa.
1 week after when I arrived.
Yeah, and Mahsa Amini, and there were some scary days in the beginning too. We didn't know if you were okay, if we couldn't get in touch with you, and then you've just came back about a week ago, and so you've got a real firsthand experience, which we'll talk about in a moment. Look, we're now using this space each week before we get to our featured guests to talk about things that happen each day, and there's so much fast-moving experience here. We don't do breaking news on this program because we're more of a podcast that's reflecting and discussing. But the weekend was certainly colored by this horrific fire that we saw in Evine prison, and Darya, you and I, we were, and Anahita too, we were at the protest in Toronto, and at first my cousin actually said, "Oh, it looks like the rioters are, it was cast as maybe this is a good thing. The rioters are taking over, because we know that Evine prison too is populated by human rights campaigners, political prisoners, artists. I mean, and so it's got extreme symbolic significance, not just because it's this harsh, terrorizing place, but also because of the kind of people who are kept there. But as the afternoon went on, it was afternoon Toronto time. It started to become clear that there's something more nefarious afoot here, and it was, in fact, terrifying what the news that we were hearing in terms of bombs and gunshots and this fire. And I remember thinking, I said to you, Anahita, I want to talk about this. I got to do a video about this because this felt like another moment. It still feels that way when I think about it, where if that same situation was happening in San Francisco or was happening in Brussels, or the entire world would be talking about it right now, but that it happened in Tehran was, okay, this is another thing that goes on in Iran. But Anahita, you were very instrumental in saying, no, yes, Jian, please do this a video or something, because you were directly hearing from, you have a family member currently in Evine, is it?
Yeah, I have a family member for 7 years in the Evine prison, and he's Kurdish man, and of course we were worried about him, not just him, about everyone that were there. And I just remember one time that I heard from him. He said, in the Evine prison, there is the professor of universities, there is writers, there is the human rights activists, and all those people are there. So imagine how it's important these people be safe.
Yeah.
That's why I was like,
You were
when
really
you
upset.
asked me, it's really interesting because the Iranian people are, I think, only people who are worried about the people who are in the prison.
Yeah, I saw that. People saying, and not only that, but writers, artists, incredibly creative people. There's unjustly detained people around the world, but there's nothing that defines that more than the Iranian prison system.
Yeah, I read this quote with, all the news coming out of what was going on with Evine prison. And there was this quote that said, Evine prison might be the only place in the world where we're not afraid of the people who are in prison.
Right.
We're afraid of those keeping them in prison. And it just, that quote, it sounds so simple, but when you really think about it, to think of the people who are actually behind those bars, it's mind-boggling to think that, such innocent individuals who are the best and the brightest in our country are behind bars. And what we're terrified about is the individuals who are keeping them there.
And by the way, we still don't know exactly what happened. We don't know how many people have died. We don't know what the chain of events were. But what we do know, I'm willing to bank on it, is that what the state media, what the regime claims happened, isn't. A few people got scuffed up. Everything's fine here. Move along, everybody. I don't even. It defies logic to see the nature of that fire with explosions and gunshots. By the way,
Yep.
Translating into a few people were injured. Yeah, everything's fine. So you know that, and I was talking to my mom, and she said, we don't know exactly what's going on. And I said, well, we kind of do, because it's been decades. We know exactly what's going on. I mean,
That's right.
we know that at the end of the day, there is a war going on, as I said in that video that I made, between an out of touch totalitarian regime and the people of a country, including those who are inside a prison.
Yeah, it was Friday. I was talking to one of my friend, and he said he was like sad. I mean, in these days, everybody are kind of sad, but he was very sad. And I asked him, why are you like this down? And he said, Folani, they're in Evine, and
Friends of yours.
yeah, friends of me. And I was shocked. And a day after, when I saw the Evine fire, I mean, I couldn't breathe. I really couldn't breathe. My heart was beating, and it was really hard. And and you're right. We know it's been 4 decades, 43 years, and we know.
We know it wasn't some terrorist, burglar, prisoners decided to turn on each other or some nonsense that they were talking about. Can I just ask you, what are your friends? What were they detained for?
They were in protest
Because of the protests.
Yeah, recently.
I mean, that was the other really. It's so dark and infuriating. This idea that they round up and detain people who are just expressing themselves, and then they fucking bomb them in the prison. I mean, you can't think of a scenario that is more dark and dystopian and twisted than that, right?
And it's every step of the way, like you're saying. I mean, it's from taking ambulances and falsifying them as medical transport, but really being transportation to these prisons, and then taking them to the prison, and then the furthering of brutality and the continued
picking people up at the hospital. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Somebody who's injured that they've shot, they then take from the hospital and say, okay, now we're going to take you to the prison.
That's right.
Yeah. What can I ask you? What your family member is there for? The Kurdish man that is. Do you know why he's in prison?
Yeah, I know, but
You don't want to say.
yes,
Okay,
please. Yeah.
that's okay.
Actually, this is a political things, but
he's in there for political reasons.
Yes,
He's a political
yes.
prisoner. That's what I wanted to get
Yes,
at.
yes.
It's not like he stole stuff from a
No,
bank
no,
or
for
something.
sure
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
be clear about this. Yeah. So we were on this protest I mentioned at the time, and Darya, I wanted you to speak to this, because there was it's like we have a choice every moment whether we're going to think about the really deflating and horrible side of what's going on, or kind of find the pieces of inspiration. And certainly these demonstrations, and we are fortunate enough to be in Toronto, where there is a vibrant and strong Iranian Canadian community, but one that is expressing itself in ways that I've never seen in my lifetime. And I'm the guy who's been, hosting the BAM fundraiser in 2003. I'm kind of aware of the community, and I was absolutely, I could feel myself just outside of my body, watching myself walk with thousands of Iranian Canadians on major downtown streets, Bloor Street and Yonge Street. If anybody's out there who lives in Canada or knows, this is pretty much our, our Fifth Avenue or something, our major street going down. And that kind of show of solidarity, that kind of show of numbers and strength was really, really inspiring. And would have been the story for me, would have been something I want to talk about, except for then while we were there, we started hearing about Evine. You were there, Darya, and you had a big sign you were holding that said, "This is a revolution."
This is a revolution.
Tell me, first of all, why you made that sign. By the way, with the blue hair and the giant sign, everybody was well aware that you were there. Tell me about your experience making that sign and holding it, because I think I could even see a lot of people were coming up to you because you were holding this big "This is a revolution" sign.
Yeah, honestly, the reason that I made that sign was that it is a revolution. Like all we talked about, it's not like any other time that was before. And quite honestly, there were times that I was tired, because all of us being outside of Iran, we just go to sleep with our phone in hand, waking up with phone, looking at the news, going through Twitter.
And you came to Canada about 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, 10 years ago. And then, there was one time, it was 2 weeks ago, that I was really tired. I thought, okay, I can't look at my phone anymore. I uninstalled Twitter for one day. I couldn't. I was just no, I can't actually stay away. I installed it back because people in Iran are going out of their way. They're going out. There was this tweet that I read. The girl was saying that, I'm going out right now. I'm looking at my room. I don't know if I will see it again.
Yeah.
So, when people are doing that, you cannot be tired. You cannot get tired here. We have the privilege of going out here on our streets. Police are, keeping the
helping
roads.
Helping us demonstrate, yeah.
Yeah, everything is at our favor. So this is the least we can do. And absolutely, this is a revolution. When people from 1,000 miles away, they are really inspiring us to not get tired. How can that be a revolution? It is not like any other time that was before.
Well said. Now, one of the things that you wanted to talk about today was you went out of your way to bring non-Iranian friends to the demonstration, which is also inspiring, because we tend to sometimes we famously had that 50,000 plus demonstration in Richmond Hill. And for those of you who are listening around the world don't know the dynamics of the city, Richmond Hill is north of Toronto, and it's where the Persian community resides, but not much else, in terms of the media and the larger community. And so that giant demonstration, which was amazing, happened, but not a lot of people noticed it, ironically enough, even though it was over 50,000 people, because it kind of happened in a bubble. This was in downtown Toronto, and non-Iranians couldn't miss it. But also something has shifted in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I guess in the last week or two, I should say, where there's an awareness, at least in an urban place like Toronto, where there is a Persian community, amongst non-Iranians, that something's going on. So what was your experience with this?
Yeah, really from the beginning, I try to just include at least my circle of friends into it. And I've been telling them, I'm sorry, I'm spamming your feed with all these maybe posts that you're not interested in, but this is very important to us, and you should listen. You shouldn't, although this is a sensitive content, and Instagram is filtering it for you, please watch it, because this is what's happening in Iran. And I think it's very important because people are very used to unfortunately seeing these sort of harsh events happening in Middle East, and they're used to it. They're just like, okay, yeah, it's another thing. People in Western,
or they almost, it might even be darker than that. It's like they expect it. Like, yeah, well, it's the Middle East, you know.
That's true. But I think it's on us. Like, I cannot do anything else, quite honestly. Like, and I always feel the guilt that, okay, I'm here, what can I do? And this is what I can do. I can just raise that awareness, at least to the people who listen to me. So yeah, I've been trying to do that. And then over the past few weeks, I started seeing that, oh, okay, apparently people are actually listening. They're not skipping my stories anymore, because they started posting as well.
Non-Iranians.
Non-Iranian friends,
okay.
yeah, like they started posting, sharing what I've been posting, which is very great. And then they started messaging me, okay, where's the next protest? I want to come with you. I want to support. And when, like, even for that one which was in Richmond Hill, they wanted to come, but it was far away, so they bailed. But
your hipster downtown friends, yeah,
yes. Okay. But with this one, yeah, they came, and it was very heartwarming. Not only that they just came to support, which was like enough for me. I was just like, okay, I'm grateful that you came. But also there was this poster of pictures of Mahsa, Hadis, Nika, and Sarina with some information about them. And then one of my friends asked, oh, who are those girls? I only know one of them, which was Mahsa Amini. And then I was gathering my thoughts who I should be starting with, like which one should I go first? And by the time that I was thinking, the other friend of mine started actually saying that, okay, yeah, you know, like he started saying that, okay, this is Hadis, this is Nika, and giving her the full story of how each of them got murdered and what went on.
This is a non-Iranian friend.
Yeah, a non-Iranian friend. And how like they are the face of this movement now, because also they had social media. But there are a lot more of people going through the same thing, but there is no platform for them. So that's why we have to keep supporting them. And I was stunned, honestly. Like, I was just like, I'm speechless. Thank you so much. And
let me just say that, you know, for non-Iranians who are listening, because we have a fair amount who listen to this show, you might be rolling your eyes going, we're not idiots, or we care, you know, we're listening to Roqe. But it speaks to our mindset in the Iranian diaspora community, or what we've felt for years, that we're this surprised that somebody cares or you know wants to come on the demonstration. It really is kind of a shock, and it partly is also because those first 2 weeks where there was just nothing, you know, crickets, no media, zero, and the fact that is changing, and it's changing because of the strength of those young people in Iran and who are leading this thing, and the rest of the diaspora that's joining in. But yeah, that's an interesting insight into the way we think, that we're just freaking out that of course your friend knows about this. They probably know about apartheid in South Africa, or what's going on in Ukraine, or China moving into Taiwan or whatever. But when it's about Iran, we think, well, they're not going to be interested. So you were going to say more. I cut you off. Go ahead, Darya. You ran into a woman who... So
after the demonstration was done and I was going home with my big sign, there was this woman came to me, because it was still close to Nathan Phillips Square where the ending of the gathering was, and she asked what was about, and I just showed her my sign. I was just like, okay, it's about Iran and what's going on. I didn't even need to explain anything more. She started crying, and honestly, these two things happened right after each other. I was very touched, and she started crying. She said that, I know what you guys are going through. Please, please, please do not stop supporting the women of Iran. You guys are educated, beautiful, kind, generous people. Anyone who I know here that's Iranian, they're great people, and world needs to know who you really are. And yeah, like she was crying, and I couldn't stop crying either. So it was just like a moment, but it was very interesting for a random person to come to me and say that.
One of the reasons I'm usually very careful on this show, because ultimately our audience is much larger outside of Canada than it is inside Canada. I mean, Canada makes about 35% of the people who listen to our program. But I know this experience that we're having in Toronto is the same thing you guys are experiencing in DC or in LA or in London or in Sydney on those demonstrations you're going on, and this feeling of pride that we've gotten from, again, we owe that to the people in Iran who are inspiring this in us. Now, Anahita, you're at the table because another thing that's going on right now, maybe in a less auspicious way, if we turn the conversation, I did this opening monologue here about Zahedan, but I mentioned Sanandaj and Ardabil, and I know your background is Kurd, and you have family and friends in Kurdistan, and so you had some information. Not only have you just come back from Iran, but some of the situation of what's happening in and around, for example, Sanandaj, which as bad as things are in places like Tehran or Mashhad that we hear a lot about and see videos, etc., it's a whole other level in some of these more remote regions. Can you tell us what you know?
Sure, yeah. My background is from Kermanshah, is like one of the Kurdish cities. And today morning, I heard from my friend. She is in Mahabad, and she said Sanandaj, the school was closed, and all the people they were in a strike for a week, and then I think today maybe or yesterday they opened the school, and the people came back to the work, but not all of them, not most of them. And she said the internet connection, because they shut down the internet there, and when they shut down the internet, it doesn't mean that just they can use VPN, or maybe it's, the internet is like just a bit slow. They shut down the internet, no connection.
More severely than in places like Tehran.
Yes, yeah. And she said because police is in the street all the time, and the people in Sanandaj and Mahabad, they are calm right now, and but they are chanting from home at night. They are starting to chanting when it's dark, because they cannot find who is from which building, which home. Right. Yes. And then the problem is, she said, because of the internet, they do not have internet all the time. Maybe after 3 or 4 days, 2-3 days, the news come out. And for example, I heard
it's delayed.
Yes,
they're
delayed.
Not hearing what's going on. It's interesting in contrast, because now that we've done a few shows talking to people inside Iran, most of them, of course, have been in big cities. Almost all of them that we've talked to have been Tehran, Mashhad, even Rasht, and they seem less affected by the internet shutdown. They said one of them said, I go out on the streets and just find demonstrations, and they can sort of talk to, but this is much harder in a place like Sanandaj, right?
And so far I heard the things that, to be honest, is bothering me is the things that happen in Kurdistan, in like Sanandaj, Kurdish cities, because they do not have a connection to the internet, they cannot send anything. It doesn't publish that as much as the other news comes out from the other cities. Yeah. For example, I heard today they arrested a 17 years young boy from school, and so nobody knows where he is. Yeah. And 2 days ago, it happened again to 5 students, 17 years old, and 2 girls, 3 boys, and they arrested them, and nobody knows where they are. Yeah. It's happening there, the same as the other cities, and in somehow maybe worse than the other cities, but unfortunately, the news comes out very late.
Speaking of people not knowing where folks are, we're recording this at the end of the day on Monday, October 17th, and we on the weekend we had something of an inspiring story of this climber Elnaza Rekabi how do I say her name? Rekabi.
Yes.
And who, of course, I'm sure pretty much everybody's listening right now, so I've seen the video of her appearing at an international competition, sport competition, without Rusari, without a hijab, which Darya, just to tell us how, that's very significant, obviously.
It is very significant, and I still am trying to process actually how brave she was to do that, because I'm still thinking that how is she going to go back? Like, what's going to happen?
Right. Well, the reason I said where we're recording this is because I think as of right now, the news is we don't know where she is. Is that it, Shaya?
Yes, actually, before we start recording, that was the news. But just right now, there's a news comes out that someone told BBC that she left South Korea to Iran.
So she's going back.
She just left. Yeah.
Oh boy.
That's even more worrisome. I mean, that's like
it's keep coming.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this news will probably be old to anybody who went by the time you're listening to this. But I guess the point should be made that it's such an amazing simple act of defiance.
It is. And I remember when I saw that first, I was thinking, when athletes from Iran take part in these international competitions, it's very different than anywhere else in the world, because not only are they accompanied by their coaches and the staff that supports them in whatever sport it is that they're doing, they also have a chaperone of sorts who is directly associated with, I guess, the regime in one way or another, who's kind of there to make sure that they conform to everything that they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And so when I saw this video, the first thing I was thinking is, what was that conversation like? Or, what was that... I don't even know if it was a conversation, but what happened there? What was her response to that individual who was with her, or what took place? And just thinking about, it's one thing to think about when she's going back to Iran and the hell that'll ensue when she does, but the other is, how she was dealt with that individual.
Yeah, they're not kind to athletes that, look, we've had people on the show, our second show ever of Roqe Roundtable, at one point refused to, was she a kickboxer? Refused to do it without a hijab and stuff.
That's
and
right.
for that was basically banned from competition in her prime. She's a champion, wasn't able to compete for Iran anymore, had to escape and defect and all of this stuff. When I say a simple act of defiance, though, what's amazing to me is she wasn't holding her fist in the air, or there was no big sign. It was so elegant and confident, and this is who I am. I'm walking, I'm doing this, and it's almost, to somebody who doesn't understand the context, it would sort of be, well, I don't understand what I'm watching here. Okay, there's an athlete who's going up a wall. And then you realize, oh, she's not wearing her hijab, and that's very mandatory for athletes wearing the Iran jersey, etc. I guess we'll find out what happens.
Yeah, and also they captured her passport and her cell phone.
Right.
So it's the
Not a
latest
surprise.
news about it.
Before we go to our first guest, and there's something in terms of what's happening in the diaspora. There's a proposal that seems to be getting a bunch of traction. I should say that there's every week, because we're on Mondays and Thursdays right now, and people are. I'm getting a lot of folks who want me to talk about their GoFundMe or their cause, and it's hard to navigate through all these. We did want to mention this one because it is getting serious traction.
Yeah.
This is a proposal for the G7.
It is. So it was a petition that was actually started by Kaveh Shahruz, who we had on the show a couple weeks ago. And for anyone who might not be familiar, he is a lawyer, a human rights activist, and a senior fellow at the MacDonald Laurier Institute, which is a public policy think tank that's actually based in Ottawa, Canada. So he started the petition on behalf of a group by the name of Iranians for Justice and Human Rights, which I believe is actually started in Toronto, and it's largely formed by some of the families from the
Flight 752.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So essentially, the petition has two main asks. The first is it's demanding the release of all political prisoners in Iran. That's the first ask. And the second is to identify and remove any and all Iranian diplomats or representatives within embassies and international institutions in these countries. So the countries that are being asked this are the G7 countries. So United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Canada, and the US. And I mean, I think the last time I looked at it, it was already at 264,000 signatures, I believe.
Yeah.
The aim is 300,000 as it stands. But yeah, I mean, it's gained
They'll
traction.
probably surpass that.
Yeah, very, very quickly.
Thank you, you guys. Thank you for this. Thank you, Darya, for being here. Looking forward to having you more regularly. Anahita, back to your station. Thank you for, and thanks, Pegah.
You're welcome.
Let's get to our first guest. She is the founder and director of the Cyrus Forum. This is an organization that states its mission as the peaceful and durable transition to democracy in Iran. She's a senior fellow at the Macdonald Laurier Institute, the co-founder of Tabana, and the host of the Talkin' in the Free World podcast. Her writing has appeared in numerous publications, such as the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the Globe and Mail. And right now, Mariam Memarsadeghi joins me from Washington, D.C. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Very nice to have you on the program. Thanks for doing this, Mariam Jan. The title of today's program is The Uprising Over a Month and Growing. So let me start with a general question, a macro question. How do you assess where we are today in this new Iranian revolution?
Okay, well, I think that the people are only gaining in strength and power. And that is almost as a function of the repression. So totalitarian regimes, as they fall, will try to repress their way back to power and survival. And often what happens is that their repression backfires, and their acts of brutality cause people who hadn't been mobilized perhaps until the moment of revolution to say enough is enough. And sometimes actually people have a sense of guilt and shame that they haven't been active until then. And so when they do enter, it's with a force and a ferocity that is even better or more than those who have been active for many years. It's sort of like fresh blood in the movement. And I think we're experiencing now that phenomenon. And so what I think is important, and I try to do this myself, is to emphasize the people's acts of courage, creativity, resilience, unity, solidarity, newness every day in terms of what they're doing. Emphasize all that along with emphasizing the brutality of the regime, because particularly those of us who are writing and working in the English language, we need to make sure that people in the outside world know that these people are capable of making that fundamental change. They're not just capable of being victims; they're capable of owning their own fate, their future.
Yeah, and also at the same time to inform people in English around the world, because a lot of Persians who would understand the Persian language are much more familiar with the last 43 years of this regime. To inform people that this revolution didn't pop up out of nowhere, while the precipitant was Mahsa Amini. It's been years in the making, right?
Absolutely. It's been years in the making, and really you can take it back as far back as the revolution itself. You know, there's just in the early days of the revolution, women came out on the streets. It's significant. I mean, the one reason that people repeat this so much is because it is so important. The roots of this revolution are in the 1979 revolution. People at the time couldn't get rid of this massive momentum of the 1979 revolution. They tried. Women came out on the streets for 4 days. My mom was one of them. But that furor and the almost a collective insanity was so strong that there was nothing stopping the wave of totalitarian terror. And that's what it was. It was very fast. It came on very quickly. That convergence of the Islamist ideology and Marxist-Leninist ideology that really is still with us in so many ways. I mean, people couldn't get rid of it in the early days of the revolution, and they tried very hard, and we're still confronted by a lot of bias and misperceptions. So people who are participating in this revolution will still sometimes have misperceptions about what Iran was before the revolution. But anyway, without getting into that too much, I just think that our newfound unity is very significant, and it's what's driving everything forward.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who are jumping on the bus now for regime change, and some of them, as you said, I thought very sensitively in the beginning, are new blood, new fresh energy, which is great. But you are someone who's been working at this. Has been your job to a certain extent for a few years, and you're not new to pushing for a change of regime in Iran. Did you, just on a personal level, did you anticipate that this would happen this year?
Well, since late 2017, early 2018, we've been seeing the kinds of protests where the level of anger is very, very high. And couple that with the fact that dissidents like Majid Tavakkoli and Hossein Ronaghi have been pushing red lines quite overtly from inside the country in ways that are completely unprecedented. And then this wave of women and girls being so active. It's not that I don't know many people who predicted that it would be right now, because the trigger, of course, was the killing of Mahsa Amini. But quite a few people I know kept thinking and saying that the crises, the suffering that people are enduring is just getting to a boiling point. There's a convergence of so many different kinds of suffering and a sense of there is no future. There's no future economically. There's no future when it comes to a merit-based system where if you have studied and you have skills, you can do something with your life. There's no future when it comes to personal freedoms. There's no future when it comes to clean air and water and environmental viability. On so many levels, people felt like there's no future. So in some ways, yes, I think we were waiting for it.
You know, if I may, to me it wasn't a surprise that there was a massive protest that sprung up. We've dealt with a lot of them, even in the time that this show has been going, the 2.5 years. We've dealt with the anniversary of Alban. We've dealt with Flight 752. We've dealt with Navid Afkari. We've dealt with, so we know that what's bubbling there. But what has been perhaps a surprise, and I dare say I'm one of those who was surprised. I was, I guess, more I don't want to say hopeless, but maybe just cynical, is how this has sustained and grown. And the reason why some of us didn't necessarily dare to dream that it could, and I'm not suggesting that it's a rosy situation right now. Obviously what's happening in Iran is devastating, but in terms of the crackdown, but just that the growth of the protests and the continued growth, etc. We are often told the regime anticipates dissent at this point, and it's used to protests that it cracks down on. And I even had somebody tell me in the first days of this uprising, well, the regime always knows that there will be a Mahsa Amini, and they know how to squash it. And of course, we've seen that. We've seen the internet blockages and the crackdowns, etc. Why are those techniques not working this time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that for one thing, the internet, there is enough connectivity that the videos are getting out. And, it's not like people didn't make people power revolutions before the internet. Neighborhoods galvanize, mobilize each other. It's not as though there needs to be a call at the national level for people to know that they are already angry and they are already ready to come out onto the streets. A lot of the creativity and the tactical diversity that this movement has is because people are finding each other and themselves in the streets. And a lot of that communication is happening in the streets, physically, with people being together. And so, I mean, I think that they are very, very self-reliant. I think, if you look back on the 2009 movement, there was the slogan to Obama, Yobona, Yoboma. This time, it's almost as though people have realized it's all about them. And the world at large, unfortunately, is quite different. The democracies of the world have shown that they're willing to let Hong Kong go to China. They're willing to appease Putin so much that he feels he can attack Ukraine. They're willing to let Afghanistan just go back to the Taliban and basically betray the girls and women there.
Yeah.
So, and they're willing to let Syria be completely annihilated. So the Iranian people follow the world news very closely. They know all this. They know who Biden is and that he has been following a policy of appeasement, and he knows they know what Obama is about. I don't think that they're as interested in what U.S. foreign policy is all about as we who are maybe outside of Iran are anymore. Not because they don't want a better policy. Of course they do. But they're realizing that with all these crises at home, they've just got to push forward on their own.
Right.
And they've pushed forward on their own. They see and witness their own power. They're not even really focusing anymore on getting the help. But interestingly, Obama has witnessed their uprising and has done some, I don't know if I would call it soul searching, but he at least came out and said that he was wrong. He said it a little too nonchalantly for my taste, but
no, but he's saying it, which some folks, quite frankly, who still embrace that policy have not said. I mean, he's saying I made a mistake, which is like I say, some folks are sort of stuck in that mode still. Let me ask you about what you think about the role of the diaspora then, because I hear you on Iranians inside Iran, especially the young ones, self-determination. We're not waiting for anybody to come and save us, etc. I'm saying that in their voice. But there surely is. First of all, we've just been talking about yet another big demonstration that we had here in Toronto on the weekend, and I, having lived here for most of my life, I cannot believe sometimes that I'm walking. This time we were downtown. We were on major arteries of Toronto, Bloor Street and Yonge Street, and thousands of Iranians walking with a collective voice. And I just thought, I never believed this day would even come. And we owe the gratitude, I keep saying, to those in Iran for inspiring us to be together and to have this kind of unity. And I know, based on some interviews we've done, using pseudonyms, etc., with some of the protesters on the front lines inside Iran, that they're aware that the world has responded in terms of the diaspora, that is, and that there's been these big protests and supportive demonstrations in Toronto, LA, Washington, London, whatever, and that they say that gives us energy. But with that said, what effect do you think this notable, loud voice of the diaspora at this point is having?
I think it's important, and I couldn't agree with you more, that we get our energy from Iran, the people inside the country. I think it's important because the diaspora is mobilizing, and then because they're mobilizing, getting support from people like J.K. Rowling and, I mean, I don't know, so many important celebrities from every kind of, every kind of celebrity, really. And then because those people like Jessica Chastain or
Justin Bieber.
Yeah, I mean, big names. And another one, Shakira, that's huge. And there's another one I keep thinking about, whose husband is Iranian, and
Britney Spears.
Yeah, Britney Spears. Thank you. So when the diaspora, particularly young people who are born outside of Iran, or maybe whose parents even don't speak Farsi very well, Persian very well, when they see these non-Iranians being so vocal, then it really inspires them to be like, "What? I'm Iranian, and these people are talking about my country, my people." It just keeps going. It keeps going. I think we're in that right now. And the people of Iran have shown that they know how to use that social capital. They're not letting it go. The most important thing that they're doing is keeping going. They're having the protests again and again. And I think that the main thing that needs to happen, which we're seeing signs of now, is that there need to be labor strikes that mount, and so that we can get to the general workers' strike that is nationwide and across sectors.
If I can go from the macro to the micro and some more difficult kind of content. I opened today's show with an essay entitled "Never Forget the Massacre of Zahedan." Mariam, what do you think we learn from Bloody Friday, where the regime security forces opened fire on children, even bystanders, in the streets at a protest in southeast Iran? What should we learn from that?
We have to learn that every single one of us is Iranian, and we are only as strong as our weakest link in the chain. So it doesn't matter how mobilized and erudite and determined people in Tehran are, if we forget about how people in Zahedan or Khuzestan or any part. I mean, we have become a country where people with graduate degrees are kulbars, or people with graduate degrees, if they need to go back to be in a place like Zahedan because they have to take care of their mom and dad, can't earn a living. We have to remember that all of us are from the same place, where we are one, and even as the movement has unity, we have to remember that the reality of life is so varied for people. All these people call themselves Iranian, but look at the lives, look at the difficulties, look at how hard it is for someone who's in Sistan Baluchistan to live. We can't forget how much killing there has been of the Baluchis. I mean, a significant portion of those executed are on a regular basis from that province. And we have an obligation to be the voice of that weakest link, I think, always. The most marginalized, the most poor, the most... this regime came to power with a revolution in the name of the downtrodden, the Mustazafin, and it has created an entire nation of Mustazafin. And in the name of God and in the name of the poor, people who profess to be pious steal from the people. And in that sense, I don't think there's ever been a more immoral regime. I mean, I think we're really high up there with the Third Reich and North Korea because these people are doing it in the name of God.
But there is an added layer when we go to the regions that are outside the big cities, the big urban centers, and when we talk about places like Ardabil or Sanandaj or Zahedan, and there's been a fair bit of speculation that the security forces in Balochistan and Zahedan, they knew that they could kill with impunity. They could just sort of open live ammunition on a crowd in a way that they wouldn't probably in Tehran or in Shiraz. And the reason that they thought they could is because they figured nobody will care. And that's pretty shameful that is an attitude that they can take. But it comes from a legitimate place where these parts of Iran have been neglected by everyone to a certain extent, right?
I completely agree. And I mean, I don't want to say this because I like to be hopeful and positive, particularly at a time like this, but even a lot of the people who are part of a democracy movement or a human rights movement, they will neglect the reality of life for those people that are the most marginalized. It's unfortunate. We need to we need to put aside nationalist chauvinism, and really, when we talk about being Iranian, be talking about every single person who lives in that geography of Iran.
And every single form of Muslim person. What did you this past weekend? There's probably no Iranian alive that wasn't horrified by. Well, there are some Iranians here, but I mean, for those of us in the diaspora, there was a collective gasp when we saw that big fire in Evine prison, and we still don't know the details and of course the regime is not forthcoming in telling us exactly what's happened, other than some bullshit platitudes about well, nobody got in, a few people got injured, everything's fine. What did you make of the Evine prison situation on the weekend?
Well, about Evine, I think some things that are significant is that some political prisoners were able to break a wall in the prison and a doorway and get to the place where they can have some fresh air, this enclosed area with fresh air, because there was smoke everywhere. And so they wanted to get at least outside so they could breathe. And when they got there, the prison authorities sprayed them with tear gas. So imagine you have smoke coming all around you, and then they've been sprayed with tear gas. Some people apparently managed to escape the prison. When they left the building area, they realized that the entire grounds around Evine are mined. So there's mines everywhere. When the people, the family members of the prisoners and just ordinary Iranians got on the streets, and just like they went to Sharif University when it was being attacked, they were honking their horns the whole way. They got to the building of Evine prison, and there were security forces there who had guns, and they told them in no uncertain terms that if you come and stay in this area, we will shoot you.
Right.
So also what was interesting, I think, is that there was a hill there, and people went up to the hill and they held up their smartphones with the light on, and they kept moving their phones and saying Magbar Dictator very loudly, so the prisoners inside the prison could hear that they are doing all they can to get rid of this regime, to give them moral support. Because, for 4 decades, people have been stuck in that prison, and other people have just driven by. I mean, it's not like it's in the middle of nowhere. Every prison is in Tehran, and people have just gone past those people as if it's normal that there's medieval torture being carried out inside there.
What was your first reaction when you saw the footage of like you were probably on social media like the rest of us, and you see this fire? What was your first reaction?
Well, to be honest with you, my very first reaction was that maybe the political prisoners created a fire. But then I thought, well, no, because it could go either way. But what I did write, of course, is about Cinema Rex and the prison massacre, about how this regime has no qualms about killing people.
Yep.
And well, clearly we saw that the fire was not being dealt with, regardless of who started it. It's the regime's responsibility to take care of it. So,
yeah, it's still, I mean,
yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I find it hard to believe that a few people were scuffed up, or whatever the regime's explanation is, when you see a fire like that in a contained building. And of course, as you state, it's not just a prison; it's a prison of some symbolic importance in terms of who the people in that prison are. So you mentioned earlier the Biden administration. I mean, anybody who knows you or knows of you knows you've been an avid critic of the Biden administration's mission to restart nuclear deal talks with Iran. Where do you think those talks are at today?
Well, I think it's important today. This morning, Richard Haass, who's the president or the head of the Council on Foreign Relations, he's maybe the most establishment voices when it comes to U.S. foreign policy. He's very cautious. He's from the realist school. He he said that these negotiations are going to go, they're done, it's finished. And he gave two reasons. And he said that it's likely that the people of Iran will be successful in bringing down the regime, which is very significant for somebody who's just very, very conservative in his tone all the time. I remember during the war in Syria, he was always giving reasons for why it was more prudent not to do anything. He doesn't speak about human rights very much. So he gave two reasons why he thought everything is said and done now with nuclear talks. And one is the repression of the regime's repression of the Iranian people, and the other is the outright support to Putin for his killing in Ukraine, because as we've seen, the drones are being used to kill people in Kiev itself. So I think that's significant. I think it's significant that Iranian Americans haven't let up, and Iranians in the diaspora in general have not let up about letting this administration know that, like, look, it's a morally bankrupt position for you to give this, because why are they negotiating? They're negotiating to get to a deal. What is the deal going to do? The deal is going to result in giving the regime hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And that's essentially funding terror and repression right now. So there's no way around it. And ultimately, the people of the State Department have to ask themselves, what matters more, partisanship and elections in America and my ego and my career, or listening to people across the spectrum of Iranians who are concerned about human rights when they say, look, it's really, really obvious you can't give the regime money right now, and you can't give it legitimacy. And of course, Hamid Esmailian has led a petition to get the G7 countries to
just talked about it.
cut relations.
What do you think of that?
That's really important.
You support that, I suppose.
I definitely do, yeah.
By the way, let me just ask you as a sidebar, because somebody asked me this question and I don't know the answer to it. But what if we? And I always have to, with the caveat that this is, let's not get too excited. But if there were a regime change in Iran, if we were to be able to get rid of this regime, if the people of Iran were to be able to do so, what happens to those deals that the current regime has with China and Russia? Do you know the answer to that question?
Well, no, the answer is I don't know the answer to that question, but I think that we have to really make a case for when the Cyrus Forum organization that I started is focused on all the major sectors of governance after this regime collapses. One of them is national security, and national security requires a foreign policy that protects the national interest and the people. And we're going to have to make the point right from the get-go that, look, this regime got us into a situation that was really detrimental to the Iranian people, but also detrimental to global security. So let's try and reset things for the benefit of everybody here. And I think we might have some good allies. I think we'll have good allies in the Middle East. I think we'll have good allies in Europe and North America. I think we'll have people that will help us to make that case.
Mariam, it's a great pleasure to talk to you. I'm grateful that you've given us the time today. What if you just on a final question? I mean, what do you? And forgive me for the crystal ball question, but what do you think we can anticipate in the coming weeks?
Yeah, like you said, crystal ball. I never really predict the future, but Jian, I'm really kind of comfortable saying that we will see more protests. We will see more acts of defiance from people like Hamid Esmailian, people bringing people together. I mean, this revolution is only a month old, and look at how many people are really shining in terms of leadership right now in our community. Kaveh Shahruz, who's like a brother to me, how much he's done. Hamid Esmailian again. I mean, how much these people have done. And I think we're going to see more acts of good character, principled leadership. I think we will see much more from the people of Iran. I would like very much to see the nationwide strikes. And I think that every political leader, every group, every individual really should be asking themselves and each other why that isn't happening yet, because it is the number one way to topple this regime.
Thanks so much for the time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The breath of the morning, I keep forgetting the smell of the warm summer air. I live in a town where you can't smell a thing. You watch your feet for cracks in the pavement. Up above, aliens hover, making home movies for the folks back home. Of all these weird creatures who lock up their spirits, draw holes in themselves, and live for their secrets.
This is a special edition of Roqe, The Uprising, over a month and growing. Let's go to the UK next, and my next guest is a British-Iranian visual artist who has gained global recognition for his dynamic, imaginative, and grand paintings. Afshin Naghouni immigrated to England in the late 1990s from Iran. He's lived most of his adult life in London. He's been very active in the protests in England, and right now, Afshin Naghouni joins me from London. Hello.
Hi, my friend. How are you?
Well, it's the interesting circumstances, right? On the one hand, it's very inspiring and an exciting time. You and I have traded messages about that, a revolution afoot. On the other hand, from day to day, the news is so appallingly horrific that one doesn't know what emotion to have. Where do you situate yourself on the emotional spectrum?
Obviously, I really can't describe all this mixture of emotions I have. It's the worry at the same time. I'm proud. I'm feeling really proud of what's happening in Iran, and just sad and devastated for all the carnage that is happening there.
Yeah.
But then again, I remind myself that I didn't expect no less from the Islamic Republic when push comes to shove.
Yeah.
You know?
You've told, Afshin, I saw a clip of you on BBC News, not BBC Persian, by the way, but the actual BBC, that the fight in Iran is the greatest movement, I think you said, the most impactful movement for freedom and democracy in the world. Why do you believe that?
For a couple of reasons. One, Iran is the extreme version of what could happen in other parts of the world, with all the right-wing and far-right gaining power around Europe. And I mean, we missed it by whisker in the United States. Make no mistake, that was a coup happening on the 6th of January. And for Iranian people, I think the Iranian people are showing the way to the rest of the world. I mean, we have Russia already dealing with a similar kind of regime, and in Poland, in Hungary, and I mean, the fascists just won the election in Italy as well, and the far right is gaining power in Sweden and across Europe, across the world. And Iran is the extreme version of those. In my opinion, extreme version of those kind of mentalities in terms of when it comes to politics and power. And the fact that we've been dealing with the Islamic Republic for 43 years, and the fight against the regime didn't start now.
Yeah.
It started right from the start. We had the women's protests and uprising against the compulsory hijab at the beginning of the revolution, a year after the revolution, and continuously we have had movements. Okay, they become more frequent now and become more widespread. I mean, I think this is it. I mean, nothing in Iran is going to go back. to where it was a month ago. This is the beginning of the end for the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, that's definitely become apparent. We were just talking about how, it felt like a big step at first to start calling this a revolution, but you're absolutely right. Like, how do you put this genie, if you will, this inspiring genie led by the youth, the young girls and boys of Iran, how do you put this back in the bottle at this point? How do you...
It's out now. It's done. As I say, this is... I mean, for 40 years, when things like this have happened, similar to this, everybody says, oh, this is it, this is it. But this is the first time I'm saying, this is it. You know?
Tell me why you're proud. You said, I'm really proud.
Because when I see these people, I mean, mostly kids, on the street, they're doing that something that me personally, I never had when I was their age. Never had the nerves, the bravery, the audacity to do anything like that. And it's not just the bravery and being on the street and standing in front of the bullets and being beaten up and all that. I saw a few of them talking on social media and on different media. They know what they want. They had their heads screwed on.
Yeah.
In terms when it comes, and that's really something for, 20-year-old. I mean, everything about this generation and the people and the way the country has come together. I mean, they've been scaring the opposition of the breakup of Iran and this and that, and the way the whole country, all regions have come together, united, and the young and old, different, if you like, social classes. It's just kind of unified the country, this thing. And that all of that all together really makes me really, really proud. That was something I was, honestly, before this all happened, was very pessimistic about anything like this happening anytime soon.
You, on your Instagram, Afshin, you said on one of your posts, you seem to be trying to do a call out to everybody, especially non-Iranians around the world. And you said, we came out for Ukraine, we came out for Syria. What is it that you want people to do? Well,
I mean, people, the Iranian and the outside of Iran and the non-Iranians, be people's voice. Try to spread the news. I mean, I have to be honest. They have found that a lot of people have come out and supported the movement in Iran. I mean, big names with a lot of clout and huge platforms. They use their platforms, from, you name it, from Hollywood celebrities to Roger Waters to, Daily Show, even, mainstream media. They've been talking about it. And this is a good thing. But the thing is, yes, the word is out. Everybody's hearing it. It's been spread. And I just can thank people for doing that. And there still are some groups that are staying out of this, which is one is the Western white feminist groups that they are keeping strangely very quiet. Those should be the ones at the forefront of this, and when they're not. And this call for the governments, European governments, and Canadian government, Americans to back people up and do something about it. They're not going to do anything. It's us. It's us. It's the people. I mean, show me once in the history of this planet that the big powers actually did something, and they cared about anything but their own interest. Yeah, they're only going to step in to do something if it's in their interest, one, or if we take it so far that they know they have to kind of, in a very near future, they have to deal with a new government in Iran.
I started the show today talking about Zahedan and the absolutely terrorizing massacre that has occurred there, that I said is like your worst horror movie, but except it's real life in that part of Iran. and again, I mean, we've said this a number of times, but in different ways. But were that to have happened in anywhere else, almost anywhere else in the world, certainly in a European country or in North America, something like that, I mean, it would be something to talk about for days, weeks, months, years, and yet
it will never be forgotten. We're talking about Europe and North America. Yes, anything like that could never happen here. And if it did, as you say, rightly say, it will never be forgotten, and we will not forget. No, we will not forget it as Iranians.
It's our responsibility to not forget about Zahedan. That's what I believe.
It is our responsibility, and we will not forget. And I mean, to be honest with you, the atrocities that the Islamic Republic has committed in Iran, it doesn't start and end in Zahedan. You know, they've been doing it for years in Zahedan. I mean, in Balochistan, Sistan, Balochistan. They've been doing it in Kurdistan. They've been doing, you know, I mean, it's just it's the nature of this regime, you know. And we just need to as much as we can to keep this alive and to be their voice if we can. I mean, I feel. I mean, one of my feelings, I feel helpless.
Yeah.
You know. There's nothing I can do. I mean, as somebody who's living in London and, you know, living my life here, I cannot even kind of send a message and ask people to get out and get on the streets and all that. I've never done that. I've never, all these years, anything that has happened, I had never allowed myself, I never saw myself in a place to say anything like that, to ask people to go on the street in front of the bullets, you know, and you can't do that. I mean, if I was there with them, yes, of course, but I'm not, and it's not our place to say that. But I can't help thinking to myself, if not now, then when?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They're your kids, our kids on the street. They're getting killed. They're getting arrested. They're getting. If we're not going to make it to the streets and in our millions now, then when are we going to do?
What was it like being on the London protests for you? What have you noticed? Has it been as, I don't know, energizing as it has been here in Toronto, going out and seeing thousands of Iranian Canadians regularly now coming out and seemingly relatively unified way?
Oh, they are relatively unified. I mean, the first day it was when we were there to Trafalgar Square. It was a little bit, you know, different groups of different political views, but not quite sure about it. But now it seems to me everybody's, for now, they put their differences aside and they are just going for the same common target, if you like, which is basically freedom for Iran, and to be the people in voice of people inside Iran and help them to be heard. And it is energizing. It is I mean, London doesn't have the huge Iranian diaspora community that Toronto has, but still a lot of people coming. Every week, every call out, people are coming, and it's a lot of people, a lot of noise, and it's heartwarming. And I see people on the streets of London when it happens that in the previous times that you would never see them. You know, it drags a lot of other people that you usually wouldn't get involved, drag them out as well, which is good to see.
Do you reflect on? I mean, part of the reason you left Iran is that you couldn't stand life there anymore under this regime. Do you wish you were there right now?
I mean, Richa was there on my legs, on my own 2 feet. I don't know the situation I am now. I could do anything, you know. But I really wish that I could be there on my own feet, and I hope that I would match their bravery there as well. But I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I would either. They're pretty amazing, these kids. Can I ask you, do you? We were talking this morning with the Roqe team about, just talking about Evine and all of the creative talent that is literally being caged in that prison, let alone in the country where it's suppressed in general, and all the artists of different stripes, songwriters, painters like yourself, writers that have either had to keep quiet or have had to exile themselves. Is it too early to dare to dream about what would happen if this regime is gone for artists?
I've already started dreaming. I have already started dreaming. But what would happen after this regime is gone? Is that what are you asking me the question of what's going to take their place, or?
No. Actually, I'm asking. I'm really talking about the flowering of like how there's this, despite 43 years of doing pretty much everything you could to put a fucking roadblock in front of it, there's still great Iranian creators. I'm just thinking about what would happen with the creative class, your contemporaries who didn't leave Iran or who are suppressed even outside of Iran. What would happen if that leash was untied?
You'll have to wait and see. I really don't know. I mean, there are a lot of talent in Iran. My generation, previous generation, that they haven't been allowed to work even. They haven't been allowed, been able to get out of the country either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think when it comes to the artist and the art, I think I dream about the time when it comes and the artists that haven't been able to work in Iran for God knows how many years, and they're stuck in Iran, haven't been able to create and carry on with their profession and their talents. They get back to work.
Yeah.
Because they're not one or two. There are lots of people like that.
You said that there's no going back. Where does before I let you go here, where does your gut tell you this is all leading?
The leading is the end of Islamic Republic. That's the end game is, and that's where it's leading to. And when it's going to be, there's a long way to left. There's a long way to get there, I think. But this is the beginning. This is the beginning, and the more people that can come out, the quicker this is going to happen. This is the way it has happened, the way it has unfolded so far in the last 4 or 5 weeks. It cannot be undone. It cannot be, as you said, the genie is out of the bottle. And what all the dictatorships throughout the history have done, and they never learn, is that the more blood you shed, the weaker you get. And they never learn from that.
Well, it's worked for them for 4 decades. It's beginning to collapse now. Thank God.
Absolutely.
Afshin, it's great to see you, brother. Thanks for the time. I'm sure we'll talk more in the coming days.
We will. You look after yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
never changes, remains a stupid lie. It's never been.
This is a special edition of Roqe, the Uprising, over a month and growing. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Let's go to Whitby, Ontario, Canada next. Shahrzad Pezhman is a former gymnastics coach, a former provincial gymnastics champion in Khorasan in Iran. She was born and raised in Mashhad, received her master's in kinesiology from Ontario Tech University. She's been very active in the anti-regime protests and is the co-owner of the Bahadur Alas YouTube channel with millions of views and the goal of uniting people all across the world by focusing on cultural and language similarities. And right now, Shahrzad Pezhman joins me from Whitby, Ontario, Canada. Hello.
Hi, Jian. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you on the program. First things first, I mean, the name of this episode of Roqe is Over a Month and Growing, this uprising. How do you feel about where things are at? I know you've been very active in recent weeks. Where is your mind and heart right now?
I feel very proud at the same time that I am sad about all the events happening in Iran. But I think the reason I'm proud is that the Iranians are united more than ever. You see people from different ethnic backgrounds, different religious backgrounds. They all have the same goal. Maybe before, people, especially with the Green Movement, I think some people believed in a reform, but I think now we all have the same goal, which is to change the regime.
Yeah. There doesn't seem like there's a lot of room for anybody who wants to reform now, right?
Yes, I think if still up to this day anyone believes in that, they're either naive or they're a supporter of this regime.
Yeah. When you talk about being inspired, we were talking about it at the top of the show in our roundtable there about how walking along on Saturday when I was walking on Yonge Street. First of all, I mean, thousands of Iranians on Yonge Street. My life was flashing before my eyes. I could never imagine that happening. Downtown Toronto, not Yonge Street up in Richmond Hill, but downtown Toronto, seeing that. And I was thinking we owe such a debt to those brave young people, to all those people in Iran who are putting their lives on the line right now, for this, because not only are they potentially, hopefully, creating change in Iran, and like we say, at a great cost in terms of people losing their lives, etc., but they are inspiring this pride in the world. I mean, it's because of them that we are all together on Bloor Street and Yonge Street and singing chants together, and we really owe a lot of gratitude to them.
Yes. I think, and also people that you interviewed in Iran. When I was listening to them, I was like, oh my God, they are the bravest people in the world.
Yeah.
So they are on the streets risking their lives. So I think us here, I think that is the least we can do, to just find a protest. It's so easy to find a protest. There are a lot of them happening in Toronto every weekend. So that's the least that every Iranian can do. As you know, we have 2 little kids, but there's no excuse. Just you can, if you want that's the least that you can do.
Let me ask you about. I'm going to ask you about your kids in a second, but let me first. Yes. When you talk about unity, yes, on the one hand, it feels like there's a lot of unity in the diaspora, in support of, as we say, those who are fighting for change in Iran. At the same time, I can't decide whether I think we're unified or not, because there's also a lot of intra-community debate. There's a lot of people pointing fingers at each other, saying, you weren't here fast enough, you have a different opinion, you're an opportunist, etc. And then you go to some of these demonstrations and there's still one group screaming at another group. And do you feel like overall that unity really does exist, or are you seeing some of this infighting as well, and some of which is necessary and maybe important?
Yes, I have definitely seen what you explained, but I think that does not matter much, because because we should look at the bigger picture, right? And that is the protest that we saw on October 1st, for example. Over 50,000 people, right? They were on the protest. So
in Toronto,
I don't think it's that important that there are some miscommunication or some misunderstandings that is happening. I think we shouldn't focus on them. I think we should only focus on the unity. That's actually one of the things that the regime wants, right? To instead of focusing on the goal, to have the attention on some minor issues. So I think we should really be careful not to focus on those stuff. It doesn't really matter at this point.
Although I have to say, your partner Bahadur, I mean, there are certainly people out there that, I mean, he's posted a bunch about this who he believes in the past have been enablers of this regime that shouldn't be allowed on the bus now, right? So it's a complicated one.
Yes, that's true. I mean, we have to look at the case, each person's case personally. I mean, yes, there are some people who are having speeches that are known to be connected to the regime, and they are unfortunately still up to this day, especially in the U.S. There are saying some stuff that is in line with what the regime wants. But I mean, if they're ordinary people, we shouldn't really worry about them. But yes, about those people, there are petitions. I'm sure you know about the petitions going on. Yes.
You mentioned,
but each person is different.
I got you. You mentioned your kids. Like I say, you've been so active in this movement for change in Iran, and on your Instagram, you have a video of your kids, your two little kids, your cute kids, dancing to Evine's now iconic song Baraye and waving Shir Khorshid flags. What I'm curious what kind of conversations you have with them about what is going on. Is it important for you guys to explain it all? Do they know what?
I mean, they're very young, right? One is 4 and one is 2, so they don't understand everything, right? But since they were younger, we always talk about poetry, so they know some poems. Like my daughter can sing "Ey Iran," or they know some parts of Baraye, and that's actually because I've been listening to this music, me and Bahadur together, so many times. So they're just interested in that. I think for us, it's very important that our kids know about the Persian culture. They know where they're coming from. That's very important to us. We are proud Canadians, but at the same time, we're Iranian Canadians. So it's very important for us that the kids know, the language and the culture.
Okay. Let me shift to something certainly more serious and more difficult to talk about. I opened the show talking about Zahedan and some of the places in Iran that have been devastated by this regime that are outside of the dominant cities and even the dominant ethnic groups. You are Baha'i. What can you tell us from your perspective about the treatment of minorities under this regime?
Yes. So about the ethnic minority groups, I think all these years the regime tried to tell, it was their trick to tell everyone that, these ethnic group minorities are separatists. They want to have their own government, their own country, and that way they can justify their crimes against these minority groups. But like I said, I think over these past few weeks, we know that that's not the case. That's not what they want. They're united. Their goal is just to change the regime. And also about Baha'is, yes, I have a lot of Baha'i relatives. And what really makes me sad is that it's just the oppression is very normalized for them. So my mom always says that when they were kids, the regime agents will come on a very regular basis. They will come to their houses, they will look at anything related to their religion, and they will just take them. And they were so used to that, like they didn't even question that.
Take who?
Just their books, just anything related to the religion. And also, I have a lot of relatives that were prisoned. My aunt, my uncle, they were prisoned. My aunt was actually pregnant. So she went out of the prison, she gave birth, and again, she went back to the prison with an infant. And my cousin was around 3 when they were finally released. And what was their crime? Just a personal belief. And I've seen that in my relatives, in a lot of friends. And it's just sad that they're used to that. They were just, okay, they think that that's their life. And actually with the fire happening at Evine, there were a lot of Baha'is in Evine prison. And a lot of, I saw their
for the crime of being Baha'i.
Yes, because they have that personal belief. I have a lot of personal stories to say, like my uncle, he was the bank manager. He was fired after the revolution. My aunts, they were teachers, like elementary teachers. They were all fired. My other uncle, sorry. He actually lives in Whitby right now. He was studying dentistry, and he couldn't finish that because at the revolution they fired all the Baha'i University students.
Yeah. Shahrzad, what is your feeling overall about where things are going? Do you dare to dream that this is going to be real change this time?
I think so. I think, like people say, one solution, revolution, right? It is not a protest anymore. It is a revolution. And I'm sure that people in Iran, they will not stop. I don't think they will stop until they get what they want. They're not scared anymore. If they were, they would stop. Before, like the Green movements and all the other protests that haven't happened in Iran, the regime was able to just shut everything, right? They killed, they tortured, and people were just scared, right? But this time it is different. It's very different. All the world is talking about Iran. Everyone is supporting. I mean, most countries, all the celebrities, politicians, they're supporting all these brave people of Iran, and I think they will not stop until they see these mullahs gone.
Shahrzad, I thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me.
Go hug your cute kids.
Thank you so much. I will.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's Shahrzad Pezhman, and that is full time for Roqe for today, Shaya. On Thursday, we're going to do we're aiming to do, it's always difficult to predict what can happen because this is contingent upon us finding people in Iran who are able to speak to us and who we can connect with have a connection with because of the internet issues, etc. But we're certainly intending to do our 4th installment of Voices from Inside Iran this Thursday, and back with another edition of Roqe as well on Monday. In the meantime, check us out on any or all of our platforms. You can visit our website at roqemedia.com. You can visit our website at roqemedia.com, where you can see all of our previous episodes, our guests, our different programs, our funnies, our videos, and in fact become a patron of our show as well there at the Support Us button. That really makes a difference to us. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together, Roham, Anahita, Parisa, Pegah, Marathon, and Shaya. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please do subscribe if you've not done so already on any of our platforms. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi, and as ever, Mizun Bashi.